Today, let's go ahead and ask a question. What are you most interested in with Foresight AI? What are you excited about learning about? We've got solving overstock, solving stock out, saving time reordering, saving time in guesswork, everything, an umbrella, or unsure, you're just here to learn. Just gives me a little bit more on what I should be focusing on, if there's anything in particular. But I will be going over everything today, so not to worry. All right, looks like our attendee count has kind of evened out, so we'll go ahead and get started. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, but just kind of see what your options are as far as learning today. Thank you so much, everyone who participated. So we will go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to Sin7 Foresight AI webinar. My name is Zoe. I'm an account manager here at Sin7. I also have the wonderful Joe joining me, who's going to be doing a little bit of tech support as well, coming in and saying hey. We'll go ahead and get started. So first things first, I'm sure what's the question on everybody's mind, right, is what is Foresight AI? So Foresight AI is a sales and inventory forecasting tool used to help you know what to order, when to order, and how much you should be ordering. So Forecast AI is designed to take out the guesswork of your inventory management to give you back time in reordering and capital in those stock out and overstock amounts. And it can also help you make crucial business decisions in what products are performing well, allowing you to dig deeper into your business strategy so you can become more efficient and successful. That was a lot of words, but long story short, it's going to save you time in reordering, and then it's also going to save you capital in your overstock and your stock out amounts. So with that, we will go ahead and hop straight into the demo. So you'll notice that this is specific to Core. If you are an Omni user, you can feel free and email me at zoe.zowacki@sin7.com, and I will give you all the nuts and bolts for my Omni demo as well. But for now, we're going to be jumping into Core. So as you can see, your dashboard's going to look a little bit different. So this first part that we're seeing is this inventory health report. It's going to give you a big snapshot of what Foresight AI is trying to solve for. What does your inventory health look like? Quick couple things to note. This has a really cool last updated feature telling you how up-to-date your information is, as well as having this purple Foresight AI branding, and that's going to be everything that is part of this new Foresight AI software. So just to jump in immediately, we have our stockouts, we have our lost revenue to the stockouts, as well as our overstock value. So the stockouts is representing about 9.4% of all of our inventory. And with that, we're losing about 85,000 monthly because we have those stockouts, which is obviously quite a bit. And in conjunction with that, we also have this overstock value. So, we're talking quite a bit of capital tied up, as well as space if you're thinking about your warehouse floor, any of your branches, any of your stores. We're talking about, product that's really just sitting there. So we can explore a little bit further into this by clicking the Explore button. Once we click into this Explore button, it's going to show us our product availability report. So essentially, we're going to get really into the items that are overstocked, stocked out, and what is stocked regularly. So we can see here we have, again, the purple branding of what could be decided as a winner, as well as stock indicators. So we have our stock outs and our overstock, as well as our winners. It's going to say how much we have on hand, how much is available, as well as on order, in transit, and allocated. And as you start to use Foresight AI for the reordering, it'll also tell you when your next delivery is coming in. We can kind of bridge that stock out gap. So we're going to go ahead and jump back in. And just to kind of as a note for that, the core reporting can be a bit static. So I would recommend downloading that report and filtering by winners and stockouts to best target what you should focus on. So after the inventory health report, we can go ahead and keep scrolling down. And now we have this over and under stock. So if you wanted to click into it, this is where we can see that you have too many products and where you don't have enough to meet demand. So if we click into each one of these, it's going to give us a breakdown of each of the SKUs that falls into those categories. And with that, here's a couple stats. So did you know that excess inventory can tie up 20 to 40% of revenue for businesses, which is going to hamper your cash flow? So if you have cash flow constraints, this is definitely something to consider. Also, did you know that overstock can prompt discounts of up to 50% or more, hurting profit margins? So then you're buying product thinking you may need it, and then you may need heavily discount in the future, which really is going to cut into that. And then lastly, the average US retailer has only 63% inventory accuracy, mainly caused by human error. You could probably think of that as you're thinking about your Excel sheet and how well you're guessing maybe with your current inventory forecasting. Moving forward, the overstock, understock reporting can help prioritize what products to focus on for maximum efficiency. So feel free to click onto each section on the report in the category. And in addition to that, you can also look on specific locations for where you have stockouts, healthy stock and overstock. This is going to give me an overall number, but in some locations I may have stockouts, where in other locations I may have overstock. Not to worry, ForesightAI does account for that with some transfers, so that should be something you don't have to worry about in the future. And I jumped in very quickly, but you do have a Q&A functionality. I won't be taking hand raised at this time. I will try at the very end, but if you want to ask Q&A, we will get to those as soon as we can. Next, we have our winners and our losers, and this is where we're going to start to get a little bit more granular with our data offerings to you. So again, no more filing through Excel and creating pivot tables. This information is readily available, and it's going to be dynamic because it's constantly changing with micro adjustments from your real-time sales as well as AI. So each category is going to show you a snapshot of your overall stock value and the share of the category across your business. And I think you're probably asking to yourself, well, why does this matter? You can now quickly and easily identify which products are driving growth and which ones are going to be holding you back. So this is going to help you optimize your inventory level of winners to maximize revenue and eliminate lost sales from all of your stockouts. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to do another quick poll, and it is going to be, how confident are you in your winners and your losers? So thinking about what I just talked about, do you know which items are driving your growth? And do you know which items are holding you back? We have some interesting answers. We have quite a few threes, a couple of fours, a few ones, not anything to be worried about. Awesome. So I think it looks like majority of folks are sitting at a 3, which is probably what a majority of us are kind of thinking of. Middle of the road, we have a good idea, but maybe not a full idea of understanding. And I will go ahead and end that poll. But yeah, this gives you really an idea, not just about what's doing well and what's not doing well, but also kind of thinking about where these products live in your warehouse, which I actually was talking to one of the ForesightAI founders about that. He said you could actually start to maybe think even bigger picture of having your losers maybe sitting in the back of your warehouse where they're not getting quite as much traffic, having your winners near the front where because the inventory is constantly changing over, you have better access. So I thought that was quite an interesting little piece of information. So last thing I want to go over, at least on this page, is going to be these stock trend graphs. So again, this is going to give you some more insights on how well your stock is performing by category over time. I like it because it's an easily digestible graph to show you what's happening and give you a direction of where you'd like to move in the future. So we can see that our overstock value has steadily been going up, so that's probably something to keep an eye on. Lost revenue from stockouts, it's looking like it's a lot less, which means we have more products available, and so we're selling them. And then again, stockouts, which looks like we're fairly steady, and this is going to be a percentage, and these are each going to be amounts. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat on any of this. And I do have another poll, and this one is going to be, out of all of these, what feature seems the most interesting or most useful to you so far? We've gone over inventory health in the very beginning, the over and under stock reporting, the winners and losers insights, as well as the stock trends graph. And you are all over the place. Everybody has a different opinion, although it looks like over and under stock reporting seems to be fairly high, which I think makes sense because that's probably why you're checking out a lot of the ForesightAI software. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Thank you again so much for participating. And with that, you're probably wondering, so now I've gone over all of this information to give you time saving, right? Well, let's take that a little bit further. So if we go into purchases, we're going to see that again, we have this new purple button called the Smart Reorder, and we'll go ahead and click into that. So like I just said, we went over all the insights available to you to show you the health of your inventory. So now how do we fix it? So like I said, Foresight AI is designed to fix a very big problem: what to reorder, when to reorder it, and how much. So this is where that smart reorder comes into the picture. So taking a step back, Foresight AI is using your sales order history, AI, and a bunch of algorithms to calculate the reorder quantity. Not only that, it's relying on your purchase order periods and your lead times to help you with when to order these, SKUs in your products. So there's a huge complexity behind the number generated, but here are some of the ways that you want to view this page. So I've been clicking a little bit into them, but I'll explain it a little bit further. So first is going to be the period of when you're looking to make the purchases. Are you looking at items that you need to be ordering today, this week, next week, this month, next month? Or you can actually create a custom period. You may want to be filtering through these kind of just depending on, essentially this week would be items that you want to get, like I said, ordering done today. Or if you need specific orders daily, again, you probably want to keep everything as today. But let's say you want to group orders together and you only want to be ordering once a week, then you could be looking at this once a week tab. Next, we have the reorder type, and this is where purchases can be purchased from a supplier. A transfer would be between two branches or two warehouses, or from a warehouse to a branch. And then we have assembly, which would be production jobs. I'm sure quite a few of you use these because Core has a very robust production job function. And so an assembly job is going to essentially tell you when you should be producing an assembly or a production job. We also have supplier, which is very which makes sense, right? So you can filter by supplier. And then because we have merge suggestions, we can actually group a purchase order by supplier, and that is the default. So if I clicked on supplier 456, it's going to populate all of the items, and I'm not going to do it right now, but it's going to populate all the items that I want to order from supplier 456 today. And then once I click OK, it's going to be able to create a draft PO where that I can approve it. But it's really nice to see what you're ordering by supplier. That way you can group them all together, and then you're not ordering a little bit here, a little bit there. You're going to ultimately save a lot of money on freight. And last, we have the destination location. Again, fairly straightforward. This is where the end of the line product should end up, again, either by a warehouse or a branch. So let's go ahead and see it in action. So we're going to start with this week, and we're going to look at purchases by all suppliers and all locations. All I have to do is click generate suggestions, and it's going to take out all that guesswork for me. So now I can see the location, the supplier, the SKU, the product, the reorder date. So that's going to be tomorrow, or it may be today for some of you in the future. I'm in the US. So if you're joining in APAC, you may be on your Tuesday. Units of measure available at, how many are currently available, and then my reorder quantity. So something to note is that this is just a recommendation. So you can feel free to click into the reorder quantity. You can actually delete this and you can put in your own number. So let's say for cash flow constraint purposes, I only want to buy 3,000. I can go ahead and that number will be sticky and I can still order it. So like I said, once all of these are clicked, or I can just bulk click all of them, I can click reorder, and that's going to be, again, grouped by supplier. And then it's going to be created over as a draft purchase order. So really, really cool that we have all that available to you. You can see how that's going to save you time. And again, it's going to save you, well, lots of time on creating purchase orders, also saving time on the guesswork of how much to order and when to order it. And then ultimately, you're going to be saving some money on how much you're ordering at a time. And next, we will go into our reporting feature. So if we go under reports, and this may take a second to load, we're going to see that we're having a new Foresight AI reporting. So again, it's going to be available to you in purple, and it's all available. All of these reports are going to be available in the dashboard, like I showed you earlier. For example, that product availability report. But if you click in here, this is another easy way to go, directly to the reports and not have to scroll through your dashboard and your overview. But we have our sales forecast, our overstock, our stockouts, and our winners and losers. Just a pro tip for our winners and losers, due to some constraints with reporting within Core, I would recommend downloading the winners and losers report into Excel to get better access to the information. Currently, it goes in alphabetical order. We have, winners, losers, and chasers. So it'll show chasers first, and then losers, and then winners. However, because of the grouping being a little bit funky, I would suggest putting it in Excel and creating a table there. It's just not as easily laid out as we would like it to be, but that is something that we're working on, so hold tight. But again, pro tip for you, because you've attended the webinar, now you know that. So that's the nuts and bolts of what you're probably going to be looking in day to day, right? We have our reporting, we have our smart reorder, and we have our big picture information on our dashboard. But let's say we want to get a little bit more in tune with our settings, right? So let's talk a little bit about fine tuning. If we go into purchases and we go to smart reorder, we're going to see this forecast and settings. So a way to think about this is, you're going to need some fine tuning in your account. Do you have labor as a SKU? That might not be incredibly relevant to your reordering. What about new items? What about SKUs I'm sunsetting? So you can find all of these types of settings in the forecast and the settings. So if you click into this, and this may be familiar to some of you because if you've been following this ForesightAI journey for a while, you know that this used to be branded as Inventorial, but with this new unveiling, we've created this embedded experience for you within Core. However, this is still available. You'll see that we do have some updates in here, right, as well as new features. So first things first that I want to kind of touch over is a lot of this information is available to you already in Core, as well as the modules and sections we just went over. So this may give you the information organized a bit differently. So if you do decide to proceed with ForesightAI, I highly encourage you to poke around as you get acquainted with your account. So as I mentioned earlier, the number one reason you're likely to click into this is to adjust your settings. You can adjust your settings by clicking in the top right circle icon with your company name and then scrolling down to the edit arena. And this is where you can essentially make your SKU by SKU adjustments. They're going to help fine tune your data in your core platform. So in this case, if I click on product and I'll click on product 235, and let's say I want to make adjustments to this product, but first I'll go over the settings. So I have my product and I have my supplier in my warehouse. I have my parent warehouse, so where it originally comes from. But here I can set a minimum order quantity that's going to override essentially the ForesightAI recommendation. This would be applicable if you have a supplier that requires you to have a minimum order quantity. There's a chance that ForesightAI might not be telling you to order that amount, so you can set that up here. Packing would be how many come in a package, right? So if you're thinking about a 12-pack roll of toilet paper, you would say that there are 12 that come in one each or one item. We have orderability and visibility. So orderability, like I kind of touched on a second ago, if we're talking about SKUs that you're sunsetting, unclick this and then it will no longer pop up in your smart reorder. So this is going to be really helpful. So you don't have to ignore it. You can just say, yep, I don't want to order it anymore. I'm sunsetting it out. Or if you have items that are unique and are made to order, you may not want that to be orderable and have on hand because it's likely something that you probably don't, obviously want to keep a custom item on hand, right? Visibility is going to take it out of smart reorder altogether. And it's a little bit more than orderability. Orderability is just going to take it out of the smart reorder. Visibility is also going to take it out of winners and losers, and it's going to take it out of your forecast. So this isn't going to be visible at all. Like I said earlier, you probably don't want to track labor as a reorder, obviously, and you probably don't need to necessarily track it as a winner or a loser. So if you have labor, I would highly recommend not using that. Well, depends on if you want to track that data. Most folks, for reordering and inventory purposes, don't necessarily need to track their labor. It'll tell you when an item is created, and then something I didn't necessarily touch on, but the reorder quantity that smart reorder is telling you to order is also based on a safety stock that ForesightAI calculates for you. And that is something that is dynamic and changes. However, if you want something a little bit more static, you're more than welcome to set a minimum inventory and a maximum inventory. Expiration days, this is going to be in days, so not necessarily batches. If you're using batches, I still recommend tracking that in Core, but this is going to help you kind of track expiration days, so 7 days from receiving your items from your supplier. And then we also have purchase order periods and lead times. So you probably have these already set up within Core, and that's all stuff that is transferred over, or not transferred over, but part of the algorithm for that smart reordering. However, if for specific items, not necessarily on a supplier level, but a specific item level, one item takes a lot longer to get from a supplier than the other ones, you can set up a specific purchase order period and lead time. And just as a note, for those who don't know, purchase order period is going to be how frequently you order. So in this case, if I say 7, this means I'm ordering once every 7 days or, once every 30 days. Lead time is how long it actually takes you to get the item. So, what is your period from submitting a purchase order to actually receiving the item? We also have volume, weight, and like I was saying earlier as well, we have a predecessor feature. So in Foresight AI, we need at least 90 days worth of sales order history data in order to start accurately predicting a forecast. However, if you have two items that are very similar, you can actually link them here, and then you can immediately start having that sales forecast. And then because of the AI, we're going to make minor adjustments as, day by day, sales by sale, we'll be able to actually then create an even more accurate forecast in the future. So with that, we will go ahead and hop back into our overview, just kind of scrolling through a little bit more just to get everybody's brain flowing again. Again, we went over this inventory health report, this over and under stock, winners and losers, stock trends, smart reorder. Really, we went over to so much today. Now we're back at the beginning. So if there's anything I can leave you with, let me leave you with this. Foresight AI's advanced forecasting empowers businesses with affordable, intuitive tools to unlock efficiency, free up inventory capital, and never miss a sale. If you like the information we just went over, please feel free to take advantage of our Foresight AI new sign-up offer. So for the first 300 participants, we're giving away 6 months, 50% off, which I like to think of as an extended trial, really. And you can sign up for Foresight AI under your subscription tab in Core. But please feel free to stick around and ask any questions in the Q&A. We will be sending out a copy of the recording in a follow-up email. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining and have a wonderful day. So now we will go ahead and hop into some questions.
Sweet. Zoe, I know we have a few here in the a Q&A section. You might have answered it, but I figure we can just kind of review it anyways. So number one, it's kind of a two-pronged question. Does Foresight AI work with items within the assembly? And then additionally to that, does the Foresight AI then forecast the assembly requirements?
Yes, that is a great question. So if we go into the smart reorder, this is going to actually forecast both raw items and finished goods. And what that looks like is essentially it'll tell you to order the raw materials, and it'll tell you to order the raw materials, both ones that are part of assemblies and ones that aren't. So if you have, shampoo and conditioner, but you also, as a assembly, but then you also have shampoo separately and conditioner separately, it's going to look at that entire sales forecast. So it's going to look at both. And it is going to tell you to order for both the singular SKU as well as the assembly. And then, like I was saying, it'll have it as a purchase, and that's when you can buy the raw materials. And then later on, it may have, or it will have an assembly, so a production job for you in order to combine the items that it needs to so that you have enough of the assembly or the production jobs complete in order to match your sales forecast in the future. And then you may go to this final step of a transfer from going, I guess, kind of taking a step back. If you have the items that come from the supplier A, and let's say they go to warehouse B, and that warehouse B is the assembly, and that's where this assembly job is going to happen. And then you may have warehouse B have a transfer to maybe a couple branches that are your stores, and then that would be where the final good is placed. So yes, this accommodates for assemblies.
And are you able to adjust that forecast to not take into account like peak times? I guess if somebody's selling a lot within like a Black Friday, are we able to kind of cut that out and be able to forecast like around that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So, because it's going off of sales order history and AI, it's going to take out anything that is essentially like an outlier. So, if you have a spike and you do exceptionally well, or you have one really big order from a distributor, it's not necessarily going to take that into account. However, if it's something like Black Friday where you consistently have a spike that time of year, it is going to show for seasonality. It is going to plan for that, and it is going to have you reorder so that you can combat that.
Awesome. And are those figures always looking at sales volume, or is there cost value also associated?
Um, I that's a little bit complicated of a question, but I see where you're going with that. So the reorder piece is going to be trying to match that sales forecast. So I would say, generally speaking, volume. However, if you're looking at cost performance, that would be something that would more so be a winner and a loser. So I would say looking at both of those, you would get that information.
Awesome. And I think you might have already actually touched on this, but when the lead times are like super long, let's say we're going from like an offshore purchase, you're able to put that into the lead time section, right, that you had showed in the settings, or what's kind of the best way to kind of go about um, putting in those lead times for products coming a long way away?
Yeah, so that would be under your purchases. And if you're looking at your suppliers, well, I have not gone too far deep into this part of my demo environment. But you should be able to, if you click on the supplier, you should be able to create contacts activity log. It may be an aggregate of how long the system has been tracking, but we can definitely find this. So I can send this information in the follow-up, but yes, that is something that you can edit. But you can also do it on the supplier level if we click into purchases, smart reorder. Again, this is how you get to those settings. So if we go into settings, we can also create bulk updates here. And because it is embedded in the core experience and it is a sync, you can do it this way as well. So if we click into suppliers, we can also create the purchase order period and lead times here on that supplier level. So again, purchase order period is how frequently we order. Lead times is about how long it takes. And then on top of that, because we have that AI piece, we can see that this is 27 days instead of 30 days. This is 19 days. This is pretty exact. And that's because the system is making those micro adjustments to what it's actually seeing as opposed to that static, what you think a lead time is.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, Are are the columns available on the API endpoint of the product? Or is that something maybe we could dig a little bit deeper on?
We'd probably need to dig a bit deeper. This isn't an API connection. This is an embedded experience. So if you wanted to connect via API, generally speaking, we're not necessarily doing that for core anymore because we have these stronger backend accounts created.
Awesome. And with the smart reorder for assemblies, which field shows what is needed actually to assemble?
So it's going to tell you what the job is. However, you should be following your production. Like this is going to tell you, oh, let me jump in and let's see, assembly. So this is what an assembly job is gonna look like. So it's gonna show you the location, the product that you need to assemble. The reorder date is essentially when you should be starting it, the unit of measure, and then how many you have available and how many you should be creating on this date. So that's kind of how that works.
Awesome. And so let's say if somebody's using auto assembly
Mhm.
on their sellable SKUs, but they're showing a stockouts even though they have a lot available. Is that something that would come into play with Foresight AI, or just kind of could you walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that the auto assembly, if you're continuing to do that, because this is just a suggestion, the auto assembly is going to supersede these suggestions assemblies through Foresight AI. So I would say take into account both of them and check them both out because you have auto assembly on. And this is just a suggestion that you need to approve. I would say take a look at these suggestions and see if this reorder quantity or this assembly quantity is matching what your auto assembly is doing and just kind of compare that way. Because if you're finding that your auto assembly is missing either on the overstock or understock amount, this might be a little bit better of a single source of truth. But yes, auto assembly does save a lot of time, so I could understand maybe not wanting to do that necessarily.
And if you mark products as deprecated in Sin 7, I know it hides them, but does this remove it from the forecast, or does that still play a factor?
Um, that's a good question. I think it would remove them from, I'm pretty sure it would remove them from the forecast because they wouldn't necessarily be live products.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it would hide them from being sold as well.
Yep.
Um, is Foresight AI feeding into the smart like reordering? And can they use the smart reordering to build orders for Foresight to then forecast?
So these are in sync together. So the smart reordering is based on all of the forecasting that, yes, is Inventorio slash Foresight AI, now Foresight AI. So the Foresight AI technology, like I said, it's kind of working backwards. So what it's doing is it's looking at your sales order history, the AI, the algorithms, and it's saying, okay, so here's the forecast. Now working backwards, how do we ensure that you have the correct amount of inventory to match that forecast? Give or take, obviously, some safety stock. And so we're going to build that into it as well. Okay, so we want to ensure that these get to the final warehouses to be able to be sold to match that sales forecast on this, day, week, month, etc. So we need to work backwards. How long does it take for us to get those items to that final warehouse or storefront or e-commerce warehouse, etc.? So that's going to be kind of where the lead time's built in. Purchase order period is going to be, well, how frequently do we need to order? If we're only ordering a few times a year, we're going to need to be ordering a lot more at a time. Say if we're ordering, more frequently once a week, we probably don't need to order quite as much. So there's that kind of factor in. And then we can go farther back and say, okay, yes, we need to reorder, but is there assembly involved? Okay, we need to be ordering a little bit earlier. So they work in tandem with each other. It's all of the same data. I would just say that forecast is big picture, where you're doing, where you're headed. And then this smart reorder feature is kind of like, okay, so here's how we get there. Here's what we need to reorder.
And if let's say Sin 7 Foresight is classifying items as overstock, but let's say there's a seasonal business and they build up stock like a lot in the summer, almost to a point where it's like 6 to 7 months in advance. Is there a way that you can classify that within Foresight to say like, no, we're not overstocking. We like, no, this is the amount that we'll need. It's basically just like purchasing before needing to have those like big sales. I don't know if there's like something that would trigger Foresight to say like, hey, you've overstocked this or something like that.
Totally. Well, that's kind of where that human meets AI aspect comes in. So you know your stock better than we do to a certain extent. I mean, the computer is going off of your sales order history and your previous and is seeing what you have in the future. And so if you do have other constraints beyond the computer, i.e., I think that, some folks, I've also heard this before, where if you're shipping from overseas, you can only get a certain amount of time, right? I can only get 500 units at a time. And let's say I'm ordering all throughout the spring because I know that my big season is Black Friday. But if in Black Friday I'm projecting to sell 3,000 and I can only get 500 at a time, yes, I need to be, essentially exceeding the amount of ordering at a time. That is actually probably where in the edit arena, if you wanted to have a minimum order quantity, A, I would set that up there. But B, I would say that would be information that you could probably disregard because if you know that your business is okay with overstock in that area, then I wouldn't worry about it.
And so can you touch on a little bit about, let's say somebody's using a similar type product. Are you able to import that previous product history and then put that into Foresight AI, or is that something that basically if you had it within the core system, that the core system history would then read off of that and be able to kind of just flip over to Foresight right away?
Yeah, totally. So if you're using another forecasting software right now, this is all inclusive, or it's all in its own ecosystem. So essentially, because you already have 2 years worth of sales order history data within Sin 7, you actually don't have to do anything. This is already going to be up and running and giving you that forecast for you. If you say had other data that you wanted to import, that would be something that we could probably do on the back end. Just let us know. But it's pretty out of the box ready. There's not a lot you need to do.
And um, let's say that we were using ForesightAI and maybe we didn't want to use it any longer. What does that offboarding process look like?
Offboarding is fairly easy. The way that you can sign up is going into your subscription page, saying that you'd like to purchase it as an add-on, and then it's that easy. But it's also just as easy to say that you don't want it on your subscription anymore. And then, I guess it kind of depends on your terms and conditions with your cancellation date, but it is month to month. So it depends. I'm not exactly sure. I think it does slightly vary when you need to cancel it and what that notice period is, but it is month to month.
Awesome. And are you able to edit past sales history on a product? Let's say I have like a customer that had something special going on. They ordered like a massive quantity, basically didn't want that to pollute what's going on within the actual forecast. Or is that something that would actually take into account? Because as you stated earlier about the period with like a Black Friday, maybe it would kind of take out that outlier when it was doing its forecasting.
Yeah, totally. So it kind of depends on how much of an outlier. If the system sees a shock to the system, something that is totally an outlier, it is going to disregard it as a one-off. If it is something that is a little bit more of like a subtle bump, I would say that's something that you should probably keep an eye on with this reorder quantity. And then also if you click into this forecast, there we go. If you want to click into this forecast, you could also see, now that we have a few minutes, you can actually layer filters on this graph. And I really like it again because it's very visual. So if you want to see how a certain product was going to be performing, or not this one, but oh, it's so fun when you don't get to set up your own account. But regardless, essentially what it would show you is it would show you a graph like this, and you can see what it looks like in the future. And you can say, hey, this looks a little bit higher than what I'm expecting. Maybe when I'm smart reordering, I just don't need to order quite as much.
And on that piece, is there a way to control like the non-replenishables or sunset products from within Sin 7 that would interact with Foresight AI?
I think to your point earlier about essentially like sunsetting items in here, because you're deleting them or sunsetting them within core, they likely won't show up in smart reorder. I think that if you wanted to just make sure that you are dotting your I's and crossing your T's, that's when you would go into the edit arena and then you would hide the orderability and the visibility.
Yep, and then also probably have it labeled as like deprecated within the actual system.
Yeah,
That would
definitely.
also help out.
Mhm.
Um, and then talking again about like those peak times, when does the system realize it was a peak period? Is it like right away? Does it take like, I don't know, a week or so for the data to really kind of come into full, to like give you that picture of, oh, this was like a really big period? And
Yeah,
like, how does it learn that?
well, so like I said, the forecast is constantly adjusting. So as you're having those like sales orders that are coming in, if it's noticing that it's, going to be, if it's already past its peak or it's because it's seeing the velocity change before even really you're able to see a change, it's going to change the forecast fairly quickly. So I would say it's going to be able to notice that peak pretty quickly, but you'll also probably notice it because I'm sure, keeping track of your sales orders as well. It's probably not going to be a shock to you or the forecast, but it can definitely change your forecast, like I said, because of those micro adjustments. But if it's something like a shock to the system, you could see a macro adjustment like something like this. You know what I mean? So you can see that, but then also if you go into the reports, and I like the forecast because it's a little bit more visual, but if you are more of a numbers Excel person, if you click in the Foresight AI reports, you can see what that sales forecast looks like number to number, and then you can kind of adjust it or you can track it with like your month to month sales.
Um, Thanks, Zoe. If all businesses are a little different. If you find that back orders are good for your business, actually, is there a way that you could identify some items that you are comfortable to kind of leave out of that co-replenishing period?
Yeah, so if you're talking about you're comfortable with back orders because maybe the cash flow constraints, that is something that you could look at if we go to the smart reorder.
Or maybe if it was like good for like the like short periods of time.
Yeah, I guess that kind of goes a little bit against the algorithm of Foresight AI because Foresight AI is going to want you to have items in stock so that you can sell them. So if you're not okay with, let's say we go to this. Or actually, no, we go to the dashboard and we go over. So first you could look at your stock outs and see like, oh, am I okay with that? Then yeah, I don't need to reorder it. Another way to look at it would be to see what items you have stocked out in this item in this graph and click on it that way. So, and then really looking at making sure that your winners are not out of stock, right? Because those are the ones making you money. So if we're thinking about your business strategy, and I think that this is a fair statement for most businesses, you can allow your losers to be out of stock, but you probably want your winners to be in stock. So this is that other piece that Foresight AI allows you to think about a little bit more granularly, whether versus just like I want this in stock or I don't want this in stock. So I would say probably focus here first.
Before looking anywhere else. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Mhm.
Um, so let's say that I sell 12 of an item once in a 90-day period. Does Foresight AI want to stock that item, or does it know that it's like a one-off sale and not worth ordering? Or does that kind of come into play with like the winners and losers and kind of how they're calculated over time?
So it will see that spike and it will see, right? So every 3 months, you're only selling one of 12 of an item. So it'll probably see if how cyclical that is. It may want you to keep 12 in stock. It actually may want to keep 14 in stock with some safety stock buffer. But I think that's up to you. Again, if we're talking about cash flow constraints and business decisions, is that 12 items every 90 days? Is that something that's a winner? Is that something that you're making a lot of money off of when you do sell those 12 items? And is it worth it to keep in stock? Or it's kind of a cheaper item. I'm okay with losing out on that sale in the future. You can kind of think about it that way. So that's where really we're empowering you to make those business decisions. Which I think is really cool because you're not having to find that data anymore. The data is available and you can now shift to actual strategy rather than organizing and finding your data.
And is there a set limit that you can do for forecast AI? Like I understand it requires 90 days of data, but would it look back at 100 and would it look back at, the entire sales data you have on core or just the 90 days as this might impact like seasonal sales?
Yeah, so it's going to look at a combination of everything, but because it's using that AI, it is going to see things that may have dropped off. So even if you're like, oh yeah, I haven't purchased that in like, 2 years, and if you've been on core for about 5 years, but you haven't bought that item for 2 years, the smart reorder may not necessarily tell you to stock that because it hasn't seen any sales in a long time.
And last one here, does this work with the automation module? For example, like would a customer get an alert when a product becomes a winner or a loser, or how does that kind of work with that module?
That is a great question. I do not think they work together right now, but I'm immediately going to take that to product because that is a fabulous question. Awesome. Well, Joe, I think we're at time. Thank you
Hmm.
so, so much for, being the host master. Thank you everyone so much for joining. Again, we're going to send out a recording of this after. If we didn't get to your question, we will also send that out to you individually and answer to your question. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful rest of your day, evening, and thank you so much for joining. We are going to be having more of these in the future, likely similar content, but if you want to get another demo, you're more than welcome to register for another one. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a good one.